Hello everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm so glad that you're here, and today we're going to be doing the mid-year freakout tag. This is a book tag created by, I'm not exactly sure who started it, but I will put their name on the screen somewhere here just to give them credit for that. But this is my first time doing it. It's a little past the middle of the year at this point. It's mid-July. Today is actually my birthday, and so I finally did my makeup and got in the mood to film. So I hope you checked out my most recent videos that I'm really excited about. I did like a kind of like a pack with me video where I showed you like what makeup I packed on my vacation, as well as what books I brought with me. And then the last video was me showing you with my friend Katie our new tattoos that we got. I just took the plastic off mine and I'm obsessed with it. And we show kind of like that process in our last video, and we also do a Target haul, which was really fun. But today, like I said, we're gonna be going over the tag video. I have my notes here. I actually wrote the answer to these like a week or two ago, so I'm curious to see if like any of my thoughts have changed, or like if I have anything to add to it. So this doesn't include what I've read in July, unless like I really want to change my answer, and I will if I need to, and I'll mention it. So the first question is, what is the best book you've read so far? So this is like from January to now. And I think I'm gonna add a book to this that I just recently read, which is really cool. So what I put down was The Silent Patient and Six of Crows, which I still think those are like in my, I would say if I had to pick a top 3 for books that I've read so far this year, it would be, honestly, my number 1 is probably the one I just finished, which is Watchers by Dean Cootes. It was so good. I haven't posted my full review yet, but 5 stars, like one of my favorite books now. And so that would be in the top 3, like for sure. Watchers by Dean Cootes, The Silent Patient by Alex, I never know how to pronounce his last name, but he just came out with a new book too that I really want to read. And then Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I'm so glad I finally got on that hype train. It's so good. One of my favorite reads. I figured I would go back and retouch on like my favorite books that I've read so far and kind of tell you like a little bit about them in case you haven't read them, which a lot of, 2 of those are really popular books, so you probably do know a lot about them. But The Silent Patient is a thriller. It's a psychological thriller, and the twists and turns will like shock you. It's a little bit slow to start. So I would try to push through, especially if you love thrillers. I think it's totally worth it to make it to the end and kind of like get to experience that whole thing in its entirety. So I totally recommend that if you enjoy thriller and mysteries. I think it's really cool. Definitely plot driven. The characters are cool, but one of them is kind of like an unlikable character. I don't know, you'll notice if you read it, but essentially it comes down to so basically the story is that this woman, I don't want to give too much away because it's a thriller, but a woman kills her husband and she gets put into this psych ward, and she doesn't speak. Ever since it happened, she has not said a word, and then there's this psychologist or psychiatrist who's trying to get her to talk about it, and you just kind of go from there. So very good. And then Six of Crows is fantasy, and it's fantastic, like chef's kiss, perfect fantasy book. I love, you get multiple point of views, so you're following this group of like young adults. I believe most of them are just like young adults in their early 20s or late teens, and it's a dystopian sort of universe in a way, super like fantasy. Everything is like super fleshed out. All the characters' backstories are pretty fleshed out. You get to know, and it seems a little overwhelming because you're following a lot of different POVs, but I personally love that. This book made me really like that, and I really enjoyed the big cast of characters. I actually took notes down, and that made it a lot easier for me because I was keeping track of like everyone that I met, and I love the magic in this universe. I think the magic is really cool and really well explained. I don't want to give again too much away, but like if you enjoy fantasy and you enjoy multiple point of views and magic kind of systems, and I totally recommend Six of Crows. And then Watchers, which I just finished, so I'll be able to explain a little bit more, is I think it's described as thriller. Dean Cootes, this was my first Dean Cootes book, but he's kind of known for like genre busters, so it's like multiple genres in one book. This one I would say is kind of like a thriller and a sci-fi wrapped up in one. And I don't think I've ever read, or I haven't read much sci-fi, so I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't know that I would really like sci-fi, but this definitely proved me wrong because I was interested in kind of the science that you learned in this book. And by science, I mean like it's like fake science, like it's not real, but it's like based off of, you get what I'm saying, there's a lab involved, okay? So essentially there's this man that you're following, and again, this one has multiple point of views too, so I had a few some of it was a little confusing in the beginning, and I will say this book is slow-ish until you get about 100 pages in. It's a pretty large book. I believe it's like 600 pages. So, but I think every moment was great after like 100 pages. You just kind of, it sets the scene for you. It's a little confusing at first because they don't really explain anything, but there's this man and he's really, depressed, and he meets this dog, and the premise is like there was a lab, there was these 2 experiments that escaped this lab, and the dog is one of them, and there's also another thing that escapes from this lab that's like evil. And it's just, I'm gonna leave it at that. And so good. If you love animals and if you love dogs, this is also great. I highly recommend if you do. And then we have the best sequel so far that you've read. So I'm also including like audiobooks that I've listened to in this list. So I have Good Girl, Bad Blood, which is a sequel to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. And I listened to that audiobook, and they are fantastic audiobooks. Like the performance is great. I loved it. It was super entertaining, kept me like interested the whole time. It's really good. It's also twisty, and like there's a lot of curveballs. I actually enjoyed the sequel, which is Good Girl, Bad Blood, more than A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I feel like this one was more fast-paced, and it's a different story that kind of connects to the first story, but like you could technically read this one independently, except you do get just more information about the characters in the first book. But very good. Definitely one of the best sequels. Ever the Brave I enjoyed more than Good Girl, Bad Blood because the Clash of Kingdom novels are some of my absolute favorites. So Ever the Hunted is the first one, and then you have Ever the Brave, and then you have Once Upon a King. I believe that's what it's called. Yeah, Once a King, sorry. I just went ahead and grabbed them because I love them so much. I just was going to show you, but this is the first one, Ever the Hunted, and then this is the second one, Ever the Brave. So her father is the bounty hunter for the king, and her name is Britta, our main character. She's 17 and 18 in the second book. Her dad is the bounty hunter for the king, and then he is murdered. So she spends her time trying to figure out who murdered him, and what happened to him, and she's seeking revenge, and she is so cool. She's such a badass. I think she's a very strong, independent female character, and I love her journey. But the kicker is, the tea is, in the first book, the killer is supposedly her father's former apprentice, which is her like best friend, and there's some tension, if you will. So yeah, so that's the first book, and then the second book kind of just continues the journey. Again, I don't want to talk much about this one because it'll give you spoilers for the second one, but it involves some love triangle stuff. If you're into love triangle tropes that are done well, this book is the book for you. So next up is new release you want to read. So both of these are out already, but I still would consider them new releases. Survive the Night by Riley Sager. I really want to read that one because I've loved all of his books. And then also The Maidens by Alex Michaelis. Again, don't quote me, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but both of those I really want to read because I know that I love the authors and that I will more than likely love these books. Okay, so next up we have Biggest Disappointment. So I need to preface this by saying I don't normally ever read romance, okay? So I really wanted to read a couple of romance novels, and I figured the best way to do that would be through audiobook since it's new to me and like I don't know if I'm gonna like it, so I don't want to buy a book that I didn't know if I was gonna like or not. So I picked up Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and I did not like it. I really just don't think romance is for me. I just wasn't intrigued. I had literally no like attachment to the characters. I'm so sorry if this is one of your favorite books. I'm not saying it's a bad book. I'm just saying I literally didn't connect to it at all. Like it was totally like, I did not care. And so that was disappointing to me, even though I kind of already knew like romance wasn't for me. It really didn't do it for me. This one was even more disappointing, I feel like, because it is normally a genre that I like. I love fantasy, and this was kind of like pirate setting, which I thought I would really love. Fable. I read Fable this year, and I just, maybe this one, maybe it was because I also read the audiobook of this one, and maybe because of that, it just didn't hit the same because I wasn't physically reading it. But yeah, I just didn't, it seemed very slow to me. I couldn't get a grasp on like, I mean, obviously I understood the main plot, but like I didn't, again, it all comes down to, I have to feel connected to the characters in the books that I read, and the books that I really enjoy. I need to feel connected, and I just didn't connect with these characters. So I think that's why it ended up disappointing me, is because I thought that I was really gonna love it. And then the biggest surprise was actually probably, if I had to guess, The Selection by, I don't remember the author's name, but I'll put a picture of the book. It's pretty popular, it's a YA, but I was very surprised at how much I enjoyed this. I have heard a lot about it, especially on like Bookstagram and Book Talk and things like that, that it's really good. I really enjoyed it. I love the like class system, how it's explained, and I love like the royalty aspect, and the characters I really connect with. Like I was saying earlier, I think that it's super interesting. So basically it's essentially like a dystopian young adult novel where there's like class system and like ranking systems where you're a 1, a 2, a 3. 1 is like the elite, like highest ranking people. And every year there's a selection where the prince picks, I don't remember how many women, but like picks women from they're picked for him. He doesn't actually pick them, sorry. But they're picked to go into the selection where you essentially, it's like the Bachelorette, like you court, and you're like trying to win the prince, essentially. He gets to pick who he eliminates every like day or week or whatever, and our main character gets chosen, even though she's in a pretty low like faction that typically doesn't get chosen. But the thing is, you have no control over whether you get selected, and you have to go. So there's a lot of like restrictions and things. However, you do get the benefit of being treated like royalty, and she comes from a very poor, struggling family. So it's a really cool dynamic, and I think the characters are super interesting. So I loved it. And there's a lot of books, and I'm going to start reading the second one soon. But yeah, that was the biggest surprise. I just didn't think I was going to love it as much as I did, and I really loved it. So I think a favorite new author. So I really enjoy Megan Golden, and that is coming from this year. So she has written The Escape Room, and also, what was it called? She wrote The Escape Room and The Night Swim, which I loved. The Night Swim, and that was kind of a surprise to me too, even though it's more of like the genre that I think I knew that I would like it, so it didn't surprise me as much as The Selection. But she's also a really cool author, and then I almost said Megan Cootes, Dean Cootes as well. I never read anything from him, so I didn't know that I loved him. So my newest fictional crush would probably be Kaz Brekker from Six of Crows, because he's just Kaz Brekker. So newest favorite character. Oh my gosh, I forgot about this. Oh, okay. This might have to be in my favorite books so far. It's so hard. I've read a lot of great books this year. Sky in the Deep is fantastic. It's big, like Viking vibes. Again, very powerful and strong female character. But Elin, I believe that's how you pronounce her name. I think she is such a cool, like strong character. She's very devoted to her family, very strong-willed, and I related really closely to her character. So I think probably her would be my newest favorite character in general. I think Kaz Brekker from Six of Crows is also on that list. So book that made me cry. Oh my god. What's the author's name of this book? Hold on. So Daughters of the Reach by Louise Fine. Sobbed. Cried my eyes out. So sad. But so good. It's a historical fiction based in World War II. But it was just written so beautifully, and it's inspired by a true story as well, and it ripped my heart out and stomped on it and put it back in my chest. Okay, and the last question is book that made you happy. So Ever the Brave made me really happy because I love the original, and it took me a long time to find the second book. And so when I found it and I read it, it made me feel really happy. Even though it's kind of funny because there's some sad elements in that book, but like the book itself made me really happy. And also A Map of Days by Ransom Riggs. I recently finished that. It's a thick book, but it's really good, and it's I think it's considered YA. The more like early books. So it's a Miss Peregrine's Peculiar Children series, and this is like the 4th or 5th installment. I can't remember which one, But it just gives me like, I don't know, it's a really dark book, but it gives me like warm and fuzzy vibes because I just love the characters. They're so like, it's just a really good story. If you haven't read those, the series is a commitment because there's a lot of books, but it's really good and it's more young focused, but it's like a lot of magical creatures and they're on this journey that's really comforting and like nice to watch. There's a lot of like banding together and leaning on each other. So I really like that about that book. And the next one was favorite book to movie adaptation, but I haven't really seen a lot this year. So I don't really have an answer for that one. I really want to see The Woman in the Window, but I haven't yet, so I can't really rate how I feel about that yet. So yeah. So I really wanted to go through some of my, and by some I mean really just I wanted to go through, I'll put on here like my Storygraph stats, a picture of those. I really like the Storygraph app for keeping up with like statistics and things about your books that you've read / listened to. But as far as the genres and the number of books so far, I have read, I believe at the time I wrote this, it was 53, but now it's 55. I've read 18 fantasy, which is my most read genre, fantasy, and then 8 mystery books, 6 thriller books, 4 historical fictions, 3 contemporary, 3 memoir / nonfiction, 3 romance, 2 horror, and 1 poetry book. And so yeah, that's my stats so far, and that's the mid-year book Freakout tag. I hope that you enjoyed it and kind of got to look at like what I've read this first half of the year, sort of into the second half. But I really want to do more book content. It's really hard for me to find time to sit down every month and do like wrap-up videos, which I would love to do, but hopefully I'll find some time in the next coming months to do that because I want to talk about the books that I'm reading so bad. But if you don't follow me on Instagram, it's at Palettes and Pages. And I post a lot more on there, like as I read certain books. It's just hard for me to keep up with the monthly videos. And I've been inspired a lot lately and been able to film a lot more lately, which is why I've had some content up. Most of it is kind of vlog-ish content. This is my first like sit-down video in a long time, but I missed it. And so I hope to be posting more of those soon. And I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.